Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Midweek Metagame. I'm your host, Gabriel Nassif, joined by my regular co host, Edgar Magalesh.
Hello, hello. Good to be back.
Good to be back. We skipped last week. We were in Seattle for the World Championship, and that's, of course, what we're going to talk about. Lots to talk about our testing, the tournament, our teammates' tournaments. I heard a couple of them did well. But before we get into all of this, if you want to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/midweekmetagame. You can also check out our sponsors, my sponsors really. Eddie is kind enough to let me shout them out during the podcast. TCG Player, Ultimate Guard, anytime you do business with them, it helps me out. So if you need cards, if you live in the US, check out TCG Player. If you need deck boxes, sleeves, all that good stuff, Ultimate Guard has amazing products. Check them out as well. They now have a partnership with Wizards. They can use a lot of the arts. We had a really cool playmat for Worlds, Avatar playmat for Worlds that I heard is going for a decent bit of money too. Anyways, check them out. But yeah, well, another pro tour, another Worlds in the book. I'll have to wait at least one more year to be the world champion, to win my first world championship. Same for you, Edgar, win your first pro tour slash worlds. But it was an interesting tournament, and we at least both made day two. So why don't you just start there and tell us a bit about the tournament itself for people who are maybe not stuck in front of their screen all weekend.
Yeah, so overall, I mean, it was a really successful tournament for the team as a whole, and we had a great conversion rate into day two. Didn't do so well in limited on the first day, but our great standard deck ended up carrying most of us over the hump there. And then I ended up kind of crashing out on day two. You ran pretty deep before losing a couple towards the end, and then we had two people into the top eight, another one in 10th. So I mean, overall, like a super successful tournament for the group of us.
Yeah, it was 10 of us. Three of them didn't make day two, but I think they all had losing records in drafts. I'm not sure anyone went worse than 2-2 in standard on day one. And yeah, I finished 8-6. I think you finished 6-8. And Seth and Sam Pardee both made top eight. Seth ended up winning the whole thing. What a beast, probably the player I'd like to face the least at the Pro Tour, honestly. Just really good and pretty intense too. Just honestly, yeah, I was talking about it
He's a
with him.
I was just gonna say he's a scary opponent if you think about it stats wise. Like there's so many talks of all time greats, but I think he's the only person to have won three pro tours and two world championships. Like those are kind of unprecedented numbers.
Yeah, I always say I feel like Reed has been the best player in the past 10 years, but I might be wrong. I might be a little teammate bias. Obviously there's Javier, there's, maybe a little less Simon Nielsen because that's more recent and maybe less over the past 10 years, but maybe Seth has, a claim to that top player of the past decade or so. So yeah, we kind of broke it honestly. People say that a lot for that term pretty loosely, but for the first time pretty much ever, the entire team played the same deck. I'm not sure that's ever happened, even when as a team we did well was mono white in Amsterdam, when Retail won the whole thing, when we had the mono blue devotion deck in Ireland. I think there was still a couple of us of our teams that didn't play the deck. I think Retail actually made. We were talking about it today. Retail made top eight of that deck was white black. So even when we had what we thought was a really strong deck, we always had a person or two not play the team deck, and this time it was 10 out of 10, and it wasn't especially close either. I know Costa was liking the band deck because he had played that a lot online. It was winning online, and you already had one. You had the mirror bounce deck you kind of liked.
Yeah, I was testing that for a while. Into the beginning portion of the lessons deck coming up in our Discord, mostly just because I wanted to have like some footing already if it turned it out that whatever the team deck wasn't working out. But as soon as I got to the house and I watched some people play some games with that, and then I was on the receiving end of some beatings from yourself specifically, I quickly went over to the team deck. It wasn't an especially close decision. I think, like you said, every single person played it. Matt had a bit of a wavering thought as he was flying over. He posted right before taking off, like maybe I'll play Bant still. And then as soon as he landed, he saw some of the testing results on Discord and immediately retracted that statement. So I think that was the closest anyone got to switching off of it. But I think we were like all locked by basically like the Sunday before, or maybe even earlier than that.
Yeah, you can get into the specifics like 10-0'd Edgar and is it lessons versus Demir bounce set, and I think bent air bending ended up was 33 or 40 or 20, like awful win rate in house. So and if I'm not trying other decks on Monday, I think my last matches were just a couple matches was a shrine deck, just kind of shrine pre-constructed, just making sure it wasn't good somehow. What else? I think I built blue-white control when I got to the house, but I got dismissed pretty fast as well. Didn't give it a second look, and it was really just the whole team playing as a lesson pretty early on. We flew in on Friday for the most part, and yeah, as you say, by Sunday, Monday, everyone was on board and everyone was focused on getting reps, tuning the deck, playing as many matchups as possible. Actually compiled a few screenshots to show a bit the the path that how we got there. So the first mention of it is November 7. So the set wasn't out online yet. It's Noah Ma who just we're posting cards from the new set, and then someone posted all the lessons, and Noah was like, "Oh, I think blue-red lessons control might be a thing." So that was the first mention of it I could find in the Discord, and then on let's see, then on November 11, like a few days later, there was screenshot of Noah who posted it for people watching on YouTube. I'm sharing the screenshot. He posted a list was had 4 Planispheres. It had a Wild Ride. It has a lot of lessons. It had 4 of the Drake, the uncommon Drake that gets bigger with spells. It did have Talent Boomerang Basic, but yeah, Riddler's in the sideboard. So that was the first kind of a first list, and then it was a few hours later, and it was actually the oh no, it was like a couple of weeks later. Never mind. So that was November 11, and then on November 23, we've got Luna, who was actually not qualified, who's Matt Wright's. We have a lot of Matts on the team. Matt Wright's partner. Luna's tested with us before, played in a PT, a last PT, requalified for Richmond, and they've been kind of alternating being qualified for a PT. And cool story is that next PT in Richmond, they'll both be qualified and both be playing on the team. But Luna says, I wonder if there's a deck with 4 Torch, 4 Artist Talent, 4 Fire Magic, maybe Omni question mark, maybe Monument, referring to Monument to Endurance question mark. I just think every set we should be reevaluating Artist Talent. And then an hour later, Matt Nass posts kind of a pile of cards with all the lessons. It has Storm Chaser Talent, Artist Talent, Monument, Swarm. I think it's like 70, 80 cards for Riddlers. So yeah, that's November 23rd. There's also a screenshot of Noah. Yeah, same like November 11, just more like kind of posting piles of cards. And yeah, that same day, so November 23rd, that's the Wednesday before deck lists were due, and 2 days before we were all, most of us flying out. Madness says there is an actual 60 card list for the discard one. Um, his initial list had some Makos, only two Grand. It has the Swarm. It doesn't have, it only has like one copy of Abandoned Attachment. It has two Soka, two Riddler. So what happened is me and Matt played 3 matches. He played me, I was playing the blue green Simic deck over Borid deck, and he beat me 6-0 in game. To be fair, the version was quite hateful. It had 4 Iros demonstration in the main and 3 Pyroclast in the sideboard. Our finalists had a little less of that, but yeah, basically after playing, I'm going to take a little credit here. After playing the games, I was like, why don't we cut the good card? Why don't we cut the bad cards and play more of the good cards? And then, um, Matt Ness, after like 5 hours later or whatever, after we've played these matches, says beat Nassif on Simic 6-0 games with this list. Grand is absolutely disgusting, generates tons of mana. Definitely want to play more with stuff in this space. And the list is the main deck is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, like 3 cards off, 3 or 4 cards off what we ended up playing at the PT. The mana was all off. The sideboard was pretty different, but yeah, just the list barely changed. Basically, the shell was tied. There was not too much wiggle room, and yeah, that was kind of honestly almost want to say rest is history at this point. Just we were just winning so much with the deck, and it was kind of somewhat straightforward.
It's actually kind of remarkable how similar that list is, like the first iteration is to the list we ended up playing. But I mean, the basically once you arrive at Artist Talent Monument, the deck almost builds itself, and um, you can kind of see that as well with the Akira list from Worlds, who they obviously didn't work with us. But they ended up arriving at a very, very similar list to us, because I can only assume, like, once you have Monument, Talent, you want a density of lessons. They ended up playing a couple ops and only 3 grands, but like it's super super similar to what we ended up on as well. And the engine just works so well together. Like it's a win condition. It's a way to take advantage of all the card advantage you get from the ancestral. And it just makes perfect sense in hindsight. And I think a lot of the teams kind of realized that right in the moment when they saw our lists.
Yeah, does feel a little illegal to play the first ops and torch over fourth lesson and more attachments, but
For sure. Yeah.
it's kind of it's probably pretty close. Ops pretty nice to maximize turn to artist talent, which is probably the most important card in the deck. Obviously, you need monument to make it really good, but getting turn 2 talent is just gonna be huge.
Yeah, the deck's called Monument, but it's definitely true that Talent is the MVP. Like the games where you have Artist Talent, no Monument are completely fine, if not great still, and the games where you have Monument, no Talent are kind of the worst games you have with the deck. So um, we made some deck building concessions, or we had a lot of discussion at least around stuff like that. That's kind of why we ended up playing, more copies of Abandoned Attachment than maybe a lot of people did, and why we had that copy of Agnaquella, the land. We kind of trying to mitigate the lower end of draws, but it's hard to mess with the shell too much. And it's kind of fortunate that we were so locked so early, I think, because there was so much discussion at the house about the fact that the metagame was going to be basically completely random. Like we had no idea what decks to expect. Just because of the nature of a small field tournament like this, where there are so many big teams. Like our team represented almost 10% of the metagame. We knew that Handshake was going to be the same, Sanctum, Worldly Council, Cosmos, like all these teams each represent a huge chunk of the metagame. And if any team shows up with, 8 to 9 people playing the same deck, it's going to have a big impact. So we kind of needed to spend a lot of time testing against everything, not just the decks we expected, and we had a lot of extra time to do that because we were locked so early.
Yeah, we got also lucky because we had mostly played limited. Matt Costa had played a decent bit. It was ban airbending. I think maybe Matt Wright and Luna had played a bit of constructed together, but we all drafted a lot. I mostly drafted on my stream, off stream, played very little standard, so it was definitely a good one to find a good deck early and be able to focus. You mentioned all these decks to try, and we uh we actually didn't test was or against the second most played deck, the Teamer Otters. We just none of us felt strongly about the deck. It didn't look like it got anything new, and we didn't think it was anything special. We also felt like I think we probably, if we mentioned it, I would assume we figured we'd probably have a decent matchup with the blue red deck, and it was all funny to find out that it was the second most played deck, and we hadn't tested it, and the other funny thing is that the handshake team, who, one of the teams that played the Teamer Otters, has had not built a lesson deck. I wonder about other. Have you gotten a chance to talk to other groups and if they completely miss is a lesson, if they tried, a version and it wasn't good? Because there was other versions without Artist Talent Monument, and I don't think these versions did super well. Do you know more about other teams' process and stuff?
So the non-monument list did quite poorly actually. I think someone posted the stats and they won, sub 50%, where the monument lists were winning over 60%. Um, but yeah, from what I heard, I don't have complete insight or anything, but um, I know that Handshake said that they didn't really test against any lessons decks. I think at all, Monument or not. Cosmos, I'm not sure about. Um, Maybe they tested against the regular version because there was a version that was popping up online in the days leading to deck submission, um, that was, Duelist of the Mind, Sokka, No Talent Monument, more fair stuff like Siege. So I would assume that a lot of the teams kind of played against that version, but we thought that version was a lot worse. So if they just tested against it and then dismissed it instead of trying to work on it and try out other stuff, then they wouldn't get to the Talent Monument stuff.
Yeah, I remember just opening the results every day when we were at the house and hoping for no lessons. And I'm like, I think it was the Monday, and um, Jaco Pablo, his online name is, got second, I think, in a weekend challenge, made a Twitter post about it, whatever, bragging about the result in the deck, which is fine, but it was unfortunate. As hoping we would dodge that, and got worried. We played against that version, and it did seem like we had an edge at least in the matchup. But it was good to try. I thought Soka might be a reasonable card, maybe sideboard options. Yeah, I guess it did end up hurting us really. People didn't really pick up on it. It was maybe just too late. Um, but yeah, it always
Well,
feels that way.
Jacob Pablo played a little bit of defense because I think he actually started at Talon Monument, if I remember the lore correctly, and he was telling people on Twitter that the version without it was better. So he played a little bit of defense for us, I think, on that front. But yeah, I remember it was either the Monday or the Tuesday before deck submission. There was one 5-0 list that was posted that had the lesson package with Talent and Monument, and in the house we were just like, please, no one notices. Like, it's too late for us to do anything about it, but maybe they'll see it and not do anything, or they won't see it at all. And that was the only time where we were like a little bit worried about it getting out there. But with that close to the event, it's pretty unlikely, I think, unless some team already had it.
Yeah, but yeah, so kind of funny as I don't know if I just already mentioned it, but I was telling Ely like because they missed lessons, we missed Otter. Well, I guess we didn't really miss Otters because we had the nuts, but we're joking like we'll see who messed up worse tomorrow, I guess, and it's like it was them, even though Arna did end up making top eights. Um, yeah, deck didn't do super super well. We mentioned win rates, and it was against again, Optimus Tom TV on Twitter, who provides us with some nice results. So Teamer Otters was the most played deck, 16% of the meta, 20 players, but 45% win rate. Bent Air Bending, next most played deck, 13%, 36% win rate. I guess not surprising. I guess our testing was just really good, right? We thought Bent Air Bending was like pretty weak once you kind of.
Yeah, I was kind of worried that we were getting a little too skewed in house testing because it felt like we were beating the deck with everything. And, the I would say that airbending was like kind of the talk of the town before Worlds, where everyone was talking about Backroom Cub and Broken U combo deck, but the deck has a lot of fundamental flaws. The mana is horrendous, and the deck definitely loses a big portion of games to that. And I guess it just turns out to be a lot more interactable than people thought, and a lot easier to break up the combos. And when that happens, like you do have a lot of stinkers in your deck. So I think it's a deck to keep an eye out for when the mana gets better. We're gonna get Temple Garden, and then you said that's gonna be a big one. I think maybe another Shockland for that deck, Hollow Fountain too. Is that right? Yeah. So the mana is gonna get a lot better. Maybe that's gonna push it over the line. Maybe that's enough, but we'll have to see. It did not like 35% is like really really bad for that level of competition. We don't really see numbers like that ever.
Yeah, one reason people were really liking a deck, it was pretty strong in the blue green mirror, which was one of the more popular decks. There's a reason we liked the deck at first. But yeah, once we started playing the good decks, didn't really hold up, and we had a really like good matchup. Where was our list. Even after sideboard, we had. You mentioned the bad mana base. The mana base was so bad that Team Handshake ended up playing a mana base with zero basics. Not worried about Demolition Field and even less about Price of Freedom. And it was funny because at some point we had 4 Price of Freedom in our sideboard. That's the 2 mana lesson, kind of cleansing Wildfire, also its artifacts. And that was part of our plan against the ban deck because the stock list had 1 basic. And we didn't think there was maybe really room for more. And even just getting like their breeding pool, even if they do get to fetch the planes, was pretty solid. It fills up your graveyard with some lessons. So we actually ended up playing between I think 0 and 3 copies of Price of Freedom, but it would have been kind of funny to play that matchup and have had 4 2 mana, whatever you want to call it, cantrip, stone rain, something ridiculous.
And it could have happened deep into the tournament still too. Javier had a deep run with Band
Yeah,
Airbending, which
yeah.
I mean is another knock against the win rate. I would say just because he's representing a huge percentage of the total wins. And he's Javier, but yeah, getting that matchup like round 12 of Worlds something, and just seeing all the stone rains in your sideboard would have been pretty funny.
Next, it was our deck. Is it Lessons Monument 14? So that's 10 of us plus the Japanese player who made top 8 and I guess 3 other players. 62.6% win rate. Do you remember our exact win rates as a team?
I can check that. So yeah, and I know the other three players were all on a team together as well. I think
Okay.
at least two of them were, and they were playing a version. They had Talon Monument, but they didn't have Boomerang Basics plus Blue Talent.
Okay, interesting.
Um, so they did a little bit worse than us because I think our win rate was in the high 60s, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to find it here. 68%, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, 68%. So, um, did quite well across the 2 days.
And then yeah, you had Is It Looting, which was maybe the deck to beat. 8% of the field, 46% win rate. I guess Is It Looting and Is It Prowess? Isn't that?
So, Is It Looting is the Tiger Seal version.
Yeah. Okay.
And Is It Prowess, I believe, is the version with they play the blink spell and the
All
2 mana
right.
artifact equipment.
The Trap, the Riddler. Yeah, I
Yeah,
played
trap.
against.
Yeah.
Okay, so the prize version did quite well. The looting version didn't do well. The regular aided lesson, even though Derek Davis made top 8 was that version, 45% win rate. And then Jeskai Control Shiko, pretty solid. So showing 52% win rate. Blue Green Uroboid, terrible, 40% win rate. Sultai Reanimator, 60% win rate. Only 6 players, I guess. Maybe was it only the Japanese players who played that deck? Just as a team?
Could have been. I know there was a big group of them. Maybe there was one or two others sprinkled in.
Yeah, we're not gonna go through all the decks, but I'll name one or two more. 5 players played Golgari Uroboid, 54% win rate. That was a team handshake deck as well. So it ended up doing decent. And then if you want to cherry pick low sample size, you got 3 players who played mono red, 62% win rate. And then the best archetype was more than one player was Demir midrange, which is a matchup we were really worried about. I think in our testing it was still slightly positive, but Kaido was all scary, matchup was all scary in general. 2 players, 69% win rate total. And if you want to go even lower sample size, you've got Ben Stark, who played Golgari Dragons. He went 6-2. And then someone played Jeskai Control, was first recording. The 4 mana red artifacts also went 6-2.
That was
So.
Chris Mateo.
Oh,
Playing
right.
one.
He made top 16, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, probably should highlight the Golgari Ouroboros deck. You mentioned that was a handshake deck. They actually ended up doing pretty good. I was kind of dogging on Ginky the day before the tournament for registering that deck. It looked pretty bad to me, but they did pretty well overall. And I know they got some pretty unfortunate pairings too on the first day. They two different pilots played against 3 out of 4 Jeskai artifact players in the tournament, which was their worst matchup. There was only 4 total players, and they each played 3 of them. So that was pretty unfortunate. And they still had a pretty good win rate despite that. And it was one of the better performing decks on a matchup basis against the Lessons deck as well. So probably a deck to look out for going forward, I think.
Yeah, I do feel like we mostly beat it when we played against it. I got to play against Benes. Actually, I beat him, but then he finished the tournament strong and he finished
That was
all.
that was the Dragons deck. That's a different deck.
No, I know.
The
I was just mentioning that, just like
You
that.
just wanted to throw in that dig at Ben.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I beat him, but then he won his last 2 rounds, and I lost my last 2. So, um, he got me in the end. Um, so yeah, that was our testing, drafting. A lot before getting to the house, then a lot of standards, some house drafts, as always. Um, as
Yeah, the
far
draft format ended up being great. Yeah, we like you said, we both ended up drafting a lot. I think more than we normally do. For me, part of that was just how fun it was. Um, I ended up only going 3-3 in Worlds in draft. I don't know how you ended up doing.
I ended up going
I think
two
you also
four.
3-3, right?
No, I went too far. I
2-4.
went yeah, 0-3 and 2-1. Yeah, you had a we both have a tough first draft.
Mm-hmm.
Um I had some really tough first picks, and I think everyone asked on the team agreed was my picks, but the one person that I asked that disagreed was D-Root, and I think he might be right, but that's me maybe just trying to find, mistakes that I made where there's maybe no mistakes to find. But my first pick of the Pro Tour of Worlds was choice between Lightning Strike and Epic Downfall. And I knew Epic Downfall was a higher win rate card, but we liked red a bit better than black. We liked blue and white the most, deepest colors. The pair was pretty much everything. Um, Even though blue pairs better was black maybe than white does. But I decided to pick the Lightning Strike for that reason. And then I got past Combustion Technique and Submersible, which is the blue Manowar, the best uncommon in the set, according to 17 lands. And once again, I took the technique because I figured, just red card plus red card, but I think Submersible keeps you more open. It's a much stronger card, and technique's kind of a blue card, so it's not like I'm that open. Like lightning strikes and technique are fine in something like white red, but nothing special. Same if you end up red black or red green. They really shine if you end up blue red or teamer. So in hindsight, my deck would have been probably much better. I ended up being mostly black splash red, which is the worst color combo. I had never drafted Rakdos, but I got past a few black cards. Then I got past two cat gators, pick like 6 and 7 or 5 and 6. So open obsessive pursuit to solidify me in black in pack two, and I think my deck was reasonable. I lost 3 close matches. I think I got pretty unlucky. Some screws, some flood, some mulligans. So hard to say, but it kind of tough to like draft a lot and then you're not even sure you're making the first right couple picks. Feels like that should be something we should get right more often than not, but sometimes you just have just tough packs. I know you had a tough first draft to navigate to.
Yeah, I had a bit of a nightmare scenario in the first draft. I started my draft with a
The rainbow.
mediocre white card. Sorry?
I said the rainbow.
The rainbow, yeah, it was. It could have been even more, but yeah. So I started it off with a mediocre white card. Just I think it was a team avatar out of just a horrendous pack. And then I ended up following that up with a pick two lightning strike out of a pack with no white cards. Not that I was committed to white with a horrible card anyways, but there was no white cards. And then I took a third pick watery grass, which is a blue card out of a pack with no white or red cards. And then fourth pick, I think I took a Flopsy, which is not even a card that makes all of my green decks, and it's a fourth color, and there was just nothing in the pack, and I remember in that moment just thinking like, wow, that's all of this testing to bomb out here, four picks into the worlds, but I ended up like noticing that there was some mediocre black cards and picking them up, and then I got a like 11th pick Cat Gator or something. Um, and kind of navigated myself into a black deck, and then ended up getting past a couple of Tools of War in the second pack and some white filler as well, and managed to salvage into a decent black white deck. Not exactly, probably like my third least favorite archetype or something, like pretty bottom barrel in terms of color combinations, but it was a good version of that deck at least, and ended up salvaging a 2-1 out of the draft. I lost to Reed Duke in the first round, who managed to go turn 1 Island Grand, turn 2 Mountain Firebending Lesson against me, and I joked that he was just playing our constructed deck round 1. Um, but yeah, I was pretty happy to 2-1 out of that seed. I think I managed to navigate it decently.
Yeah, 2 Tools of War, best uncommon in archetype. So
Mm-hmm.
that's nice. Yeah, I did not. I went 0-3. Uh, so I was a little bummed out. I lost a game where if I have my third swamp on turn 3, I get to infest and probably win the match 2-0. Third game, I draw like 13 lands, 7 spells. Last game of round 3, I die was 2 cat gators in hand, 6 lands in play, and it's a game where I had mulligans and had to bottom a land. So if I had that land, I would have won. I also only drew Pursuit in the very last game on like turn 5 or 6. Um, my kind of my
The
one,
classic.
yeah. In 9 games during one time, you're good, right? That was rough, and on this one, I was like, well, at least we have a good constructed deck, but even it was a good constructed deck, 4 is tough, and I got paired against
Yeah,
the
because
yeah.
for those who don't know, Worlds is different, and it's actually it's only 7 rounds day one, and it's a 4-3 cuts, so it's
Hmm.
it's a lot harder to day two than out of Pro Tour, both for record purposes and obviously skill level of opponents.
Yeah, so that was literally a point in the turn where I was 0-3, down a game, mulliganing to 5 in game 2 against.
Oh, I didn't
Uh,
know that.
yeah, I was literally, yeah, that was the spot where I was at some point. Um, I was actually mulliganing to 5, my opponent kept second, and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I'm like, "It's fine, it happens, whatever." And I really, in the back of my mind, I was just thinking, just give me a Riddler, just give me a Riddler, so I have a chance, you know, just the classic Rummage Riddler when you multiply. And I did. I drew a Riddler, got me out of the game. One kind of close game. I still think I was gonna lose. He was playing the Blink version, Blink Portal Riddler, but I think that matchup was like pretty good for us because even if they get a little ahead, it's their deck's a little clunky and it's not easy for them to kill us. He didn't have the siege, the blue red siege, which is one of the scariest cards because it just gives haste to their creature. You know, haste a warp Riddler, stuff like that. That you know the other deck plays. They also don't have FOMO, so um, even that game it was a Riddler. I thought I was like still gonna lose, but at some point I guess I got my engine going, and I think I got lucky. He had two braids and then a null or two, and I got a monument to stick for a few turns, and that was enough. And then just kind of yeah, kept running good. I had a match against Corey Burkhardt playing Jeskai Control where we were gonna draw and he ended up scooping to me, which was really nice. Really, just kind of unfortunate spot too, and you know it was kind of close. I think he was probably even slightly ahead, but I guess he felt like I had a better chance in the tournament. I don't know. It was kind of a tough spot. So that was like super kind of him. Ended up winning the next two. I won a close one against Blue Reds, the Frost Siege version, that was tough. And then last round of day one, it was really nice. I got paired against Jeskai Control, and he had nothing for our deck. Basically, his main deck had no braids, only free sub counters, so literally zero ways to get rid. No iceberg, zero ways to get rid of the monuments when it was in play. And then his sideboard had one exercise, one negate. So yeah, I felt pretty good, and that went well, and I squeezed in as you know dead last on breakers, but squeezed it into day two.
Yeah, I think that that's something that was common for a lot of my opponents too. Just like so few answers to resolved artifacts and enchantments that I think is gonna change a lot going forward and maybe drastically change the how good the deck is. But I mean, even for the most part, it's like if you abrade a monument or something, unless it's exactly on turn three, they're probably gonna get some value out of it, and even that can be difficult to come back from sometimes.
Yeah, how did your kind of first constructed portion go?
Yeah, so my day one was I got to play against the Teamer Otters Gauntlet. I played 3 rounds against Teamer Otters. I ended up winning 2 of them, and the third one I actually just completely threw the game. I was up a game, and I just kind of brain farted and forgot that my opponent had a bunch of food tokens in play that they had made with Paw Patch formation. They had a Rao emblem that wasn't like super annoying, but they did have a turn where they made a bunch of food tokens, and I had forgot about it. They were just using face down cards to mark them, and I tried to kill my opponent with monument triggers that I thought they couldn't do anything about, and they were able to gain some life and then slowly claw back into the game in a spot where I think I shouldn't have possibly been able to lose. So that was game two, and then game three I mulliganed I think, and then didn't get anything going. So justly deserved I suppose, but yeah, I ended up beating 2 other otter decks. One of them was the winning in, so that was kind of fortunate. And the third match was against I don't even know at this point, actually. Oh, it was against Demir. So the last match was against Demir. It was actually the player who went 6-2, I think, or maybe even 7-1. They beat me and Mad on day one, I think. Mad Nass. And yeah, his list looked very good against our list actually. Like you said earlier, Demir was kind of one of the scarier matchups in our testing. We spent a lot of time testing against Demir relative to how prevalent it was in the metagame, probably too much time, but we were kind of worried about figuring out that matchup and how much hate we actually needed or how many answers. I didn't end up playing the Deal 5, the Barrage.
I don't think anyone
I know
did.
some of the
Really?
Seth did actually,
Okay.
and I think a couple other people. But I had a Torch Tower, but he had 4 copies of Preacher of the Schism, which I think we never played against in house. we didn't play against that version, and that kind of messed up my sideboarding a little bit. I ended up keeping in more Iros than we normally do, but they were kind of poor when he didn't draw the Preacher. So, I just got destroyed by the Dimir draw, just Kaido into interaction, and I couldn't really get a footing in either game. Um, so that one was tough, but yeah, managed to squeak in a day two after beating Otters in the last round, and then carried on from 4-3 there.
Yeah, yeah. My day two one started much better. I actually drafted red green though, kind of black green or black red green. Not the best color combo, but I had a really fun draft where I ended up with four Tiger Dillo. That's the red and one for free. That needs other four power creatures to attack or block. So four of these. I see best in red green. I got lucky. I opened the Legend of Roku in the third pack. Because even though my deck was pretty solid, I think without that card, I would have like, who knows? I win 2-1. Maybe I don't win a match without that card. And that's kind of the opposite of day one. I had Legend of Roku, I think, on turn four and four of my first five games or something. And then drew it in timely manner. I did end up losing a match where I like got stuck on free lands and then super flooded. So I was kind of having hopes that Frio was that deck, and then I won the first couple of rounds of standard. I beat Otters, and then I beat I forget, and then I had round 15. I feel like that you were talking about the deck. It was pretty tricky to play. I was worried going into the tournament because I had a bunch of reps with it, but not only was there a million triggers to remember, but there was also just the sequencing's not always obvious, and I was messing up a decent bit in testing. Felt like I played pretty well for the most part at the PT. I think there's like one or two spots where I feel like I sequenced poorly and didn't get punished for it. Um, I think one of the trickiest things actually was in the sideboard games when you drew a Riddler. Felt like it was not trivial to know when to use Riddler, when to warp it, when to hardcast it. And I think that was, a couple spots where I felt like I was not playing great. You also kind of had to play fast because the rounds were, even if you were playing at a decent pace, at the games, just so many triggers and games take a while to end. Even when we take over, it can take a little while. So yeah, I just got paired against Japanese player. I don't want to butcher his name. I think it's Akira Shibata in round 15. We were both 8-4, except my breakers were terrible. I never had hopes of top 8 even after starting strong on day 2 because I think Reed told me that last year 2 players missed at X4. So knowing I had the worst breakers, it was basically a miracle. Even Matt Nasu ended up 10th. Was better breakers than me. I probably would have gone at 11 or 12 even if I won the last two. Anyways, lose a really close game one. I was behind. I come back. Same story in game two. I fall behind. I was pretty far behind at one point, but managed to draw out of it. Kill him with 0 cards in my deck, and then I think I made just kind of a bad mistake in game three and. He mulligans to 5 on the play. I keep a hand with turn 1 Grand, turn 2 Artist Talent, turn 3 Monument, and he just kills me on turn 4 and kind of tunnel vision spot, basically gambling, leaving myself dead on board if he had 2 spells, and he did, but I could have taken a different line. We're in time crunch, just 2 minutes left, so a little unfortunate. I lose that one. I end up getting paired against Sultai Reanimator, which we thought was maybe our worst matchup. I get 2-0'd. I drew pretty poorly. Like game one, he drew really well, and that's where they have a big edge. And in game two, I think is much better for us, probably even favorable. But I think I just mulliganed to 5. I had a kind of a couple close mulligan decisions, I think. So it was good, Obviously, after starting 0-3, I was happy to end the tournament at 8-6, but when you lose the last, it matters a lot. Like the way, if you
Or
messed
you
up,
win and lose your matches. Yeah.
yeah, the combo of losing the last 2 matches and also messing up round 15. And it's kind of high stakes, Worlds is kind of the end of season tournament. That's what you kind of one of the things you fight for all year, trying to have solid finishes. And one of the reasons is just because it's where there's the most money. Um, and it kind of reminded me of my Worlds Cup years ago where I was doing well, and I guess I had a better day one. I actually was doing well on day one, but I think same thing. I ended up losing the last couple of rounds, and these matches are roughly worth like $5,000 each. So, if I win the last two, I make an extra 10 grand. So, it does matter. It does feel a little bad, but you just gotta play good. My opponents were pretty strong. Most of the peoples I beat, I felt were playing solid as well. So you're not entitled to anything, even if we did have a really good deck, and just you gotta execute. And Shibata played really well against me. I don't think I noticed him making any mistakes. And he ended up
Yeah, he played really crisp from what I saw him play. I watched a little bit of your match against him, and then of course the top 8 matches. He seemed like he was well practiced with the deck.
yeah, he was. Yes, your day two was not like the most eventful. You had a kind of rough start.
Yeah, I had a really rough day too. So I ended up being in a 10-person pod. I don't know if you were either.
I
There
was in
was
a
there was
nine
three
person pods.
9-person. Yeah, there was two 10-person pods and a 9-person pod in day two, which I thought was pretty strange, but that's how they chose to round out the numbers. And yeah, I had another rough draft where I waffled a lot in the first pack. I took like a glider staff first, I think, and then the rare Ty Lee second into another blue card or something, and then I ended up playing black green at the end of it, which is another one of my least favorite color combinations. So
Yeah,
neither draft really went the way that I wanted, and yeah, my black green deck was quite mediocre. I wasn't super happy with it. I ended up splashing blue because my fixing was good at least, but yeah, a lot of subpar cards and my curve was bad. I ended up winning round one against Nam Dang, who was on our team, in a close match. But then I lost round two to a better green deck, and then I ended up, because of the 10-person pod, getting up paired in round three against Ken Yukihiro, who was 2-0 with like a fantastic deck, and I managed to win game one somehow. He like kind of got a mana screwed early, and I got to leverage the tempo a bit, but he destroyed me in the next two games, and that was kind of a bit of a sting to get paired to a great deck with my horrible deck against the player of the year. So that one kind of hurt, but yeah. So 1-2 at that point. Top eight is dead, but still a lot to play for. And then I ended up playing 4 Izzet in constructed, and I think I kind of just played mediocre the whole day, to be honest, for constructed. I won. I won against a lessons mirror who didn't have monument talent. That match ended up being pretty easy, just through deck advantage. My opponent played well, but he couldn't really keep up with all the extra power. And then I played another lessons mirror where I actually ended up getting solo. So he was playing lessons with no talent monument, but he had 2 Rows in the main deck and one copy of the Frost Siege.
okay.
And I thought it was interesting when I looked at his list. I know that it's not something I think we tried it when we tried the non-monument version, but we never tried it like just in a regular build. And um, yeah, I ended up basically getting soloed by the Siege in game one. Like he played it early on a board where it was kind of parity and I wasn't able to answer it, and then for the rest of the game, even though I was up a ton of cards, like all his otters had haste and got in 3 to 4 damage the turn he played them, and even though I was up a ton of cards, like I had a full hand when I died, I think, and he was basically empty, but it didn't matter. He was able to get across the finish line, and then in game two, I mulliganed to 5, and I don't think I ever hit my third land drop, so that one was uneventful.
Yeah,
Uh, and then I played a match against CMAC, who was playing the Cosmos is a list, the same list as JED, I think, and we ended up playing a really close 3-set match where I think I kind of just made some suboptimal sequencing decisions, like just small things that ended up adding up, and I ended up losing a really close game three where He had to just he had to kill me on the last turn with like a duelist of the mind that I knew about that I ended up bouncing, but he had to like draw a few extra cards, and he ended up getting there off like a loot and a card draw spell. So, but I think I could have. I think if I got a couple cards deeper, which I might have been able to do, I would have been able to prevent that happening. So I think that one was on me, but he played well, and I played a little bit less well. So I think that's just how it goes, I guess. And
Yeah.
then in the last round, I rounded off the day by playing against Nam again. I played him the first round of day two and the last round, and that was just like a 74 card mirror where he ended up winning.
Yeah, the mirror is all snowbally and maybe not the most interesting. Whoever gets artist talent plus monument first usually wins. The other
Yeah, we
damage
had
can matter, but
we had a lot of discussions in the house about prisoner dilemmas leading up to the event. There had to be some ground rules put in place as to how much stuff we wanted for the mirror, but
how many
uh,
annuls
we,
specifically?
yeah, so we ended up playing one annul. Two Soul Guy Lanterns are obviously pretty good too, but those were mostly for the Reanimator deck, so that's how we justified those. But yeah, without knowing, it wouldn't have made a lot of sense to play like a ton of annuls or a braids if we were going to be the only people playing this deck, and maybe going forward the matchup's going to have a little bit more counterplay if we devote some sideboard slots to beating the mirror. But yeah, the way that we had it set up, it felt a little high variance.
Yeah, I was advocating for more annuls at some point because we were worried about the siege against blue red, and they have FOMO, they have Talon, they have the siege, they have a decent amount of hits, and
And
also
the artifact hate after board.
yeah, we were also worried about the artifact deck. It didn't end up being very popular, but that was one of our tougher game ones. So having extra annuls there would have been good, even though I think that we found out that the better counters against them was the ones that could counter United Battlefront, the company for non-creatures. I also thought Annul was one of the better cards against Sultai Reanimator, just because the saga is so key to the Sultai saga that destroys opponents, kind of key card of the matchup. But even by the end of testing, I was not like really pushing for it super hard. And yeah, why do you think you didn't? Were you like head not into it after going 1-2 in the draft? Not being in top eight contention anymore, or just enough day? You mentioned that matchup to the GD is kind of the stock is it Tiger Seal. Like I feel like that matchup's probably one of the tougher ones to play just because they can kill you out of nowhere. So there's a bunch of spots where you have to be like, should I be all inefficient and try and kill a threat so I don't just die to siege FOMO, whatnot. Maybe they're playing Wild Ride sometimes, I'm not sure. Or should I try and, develop my boards? And when I played that matchup on day one, I think that's one of the matchups where I felt like I was missequencing and kind of probably cost myself some EV, but did end up getting punished.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's the match that I played the worst for sure. Yeah, like you said, it's just super tricky to juggle playing around, how they could react to what you're doing, and also how much pressure they can put on you randomly. Because like sometimes you feel stable, and then they just go like, you know, FOMO Tiger Seal or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're representing 10 damage, and that's a lot, right? So, I know the big mistake that I made was in the third game where I was pretty deep in my deck, and I think I wasn't paying enough attention to how many resources I had left, and I ended up bouncing a Duelist of the Mind on one turn when I was going to be able to draw a bunch of cards that turn, and I should have realized that there was like still three Iros in my deck, so it was probably better to delay that decision and then save the bounce for something else. Rather than trying to dig to an instant speed removal spell, stuff like that. But yeah, mostly just I mean, I probably could have played a little bit slower, but there was always a time concern. And there's just, yeah, so many things to think about. Yeah, just one of those games where, like, can't really pinpoint, like, specific mistakes, but kind of just felt like I was playing a little sloppy the whole time, and it kind of added up.
Yeah, I also got lucky a couple times. I won 2 games in the tournament, was exactly 0 cards in my deck. And I feel like that's probably spots if you can somehow plan a little ahead where I probably wouldn't have had to cut it this close. Um, I could easily see these games just losing by one card instead of winning. Was exactly 0 cards in my deck, so I'm sure that
Yeah, if you're not
was
paying attention to it, it's like almost a fluke that it doesn't happen, right? Like it's so
yeah.
easy for you to just rummage one more time or whatever.
Well, of course, I was paying attention to it when I had like 5, 6, 8, 10 cards maybe left, and I was
Right.
starting to be really careful. But there's probably some spots even earlier in the game where you should start paying attention to that stuff. Um, so yeah, 8-6 finish for me, 6-8 for you. Matt Nass won his last round, but he was really just playing for like 9 stents, 11 because of his breakers he got stents, and then our champion, I like to refer to whoever's doing best on our team as our champion. That was Sam Party. He went 6-1 on day one. He freed his draft. He had a really really strong draft deck. Then he won his first round of constructed. He was the first to lock up seed one, lock up his spot in top eight with seed one, and then Seth, who started the tournament 0-2 and then just didn't lose another match for the rest of the tournament. Just 10 win straights in the Swiss, locking up the third seed, I believe. And then you said he swept the top eight. He didn't lose a match,
He did.
or
He
he didn't
didn't
lose a
he didn't
game.
lose
I
a
mean,
game in top eight.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah, just total dominance. I streamed today. All people wanted to talk about was the take back. So I guess we should address it. Um, yeah, I think it's just the
Yeah,
way.
it's a good segue after you're almost decking yourself
Yeah, yeah,
talk.
that I was thinking about that when I was talking about decking myself too. Yeah, Seth kind of like had a spot where he cast a spell and then realized he was gonna get decked against Kentucky Hero, and then nothing meaningful had happened, so they will let you take back um, some things sometimes if nothing had happened, if you haven't gained extra information from anything your opponent could have done. So it might have looked bad for people at home looking, and maybe even a little lame when he's already up 2-0, and this is how Ken loses a third game. But it's just the way they rule. If anything, they're even more lenient in top eight, I feel, than they can be on the Swiss. Um, and I don't look at social media anymore, but clearly that was huge discourse about that stuff. Literally, no one mentioned like it's kind of telling. Like literally, no one in chat was like, "Wow, Seth won after starting the tournament 0-2, won 13 matches in a row." The only thing they wanted me to talk about was what I thought about him being able to take back his spell. So kind of a little sad, but just the way it
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
it's always unfortunate that the most angry voices are the loudest, right, when it comes to this stuff, and um it's going to be like a little bit of a souring of the event, but like hopefully it doesn't take too much away from it because it is obviously still a great achievement. And I think a lot of the hate also just comes from like because this is a relatively new rule in the scheme of things. The whole take back policy is within the last few years of judging policy. So there's a lot of people who aren't aware that this is a thing that happens even at the RCQ level or whatever it may be. Um, Obviously, the stakes are not as high and it can look a little bit worse, but um, this is something that's been happening for a little while now. This is just kind of like on the forefront of it's much more visible than other occurrences, right? So it's going to cause a little bit more of a stir.
Yeah, it's been like 6, 7 years now that they rolled that way. I remember the team PT the anniversary PT 25. I got a pretty pretty annoying rolling against me where my opponent went, cast a looting, discards a blood gas, plays a land, triggers a blood gas, and then he got to like take back which card he wanted to discard. Uh, I'd argued it was a funny story. I argued it was a head judge that I could have surgical extraction. It was back before open deck list. I was playing blue white control. I was like, listen, now he knows I don't have surgical extraction because he put the blood gas trigger on the stack and I didn't react. That's actually a card that people play in the sideboard of blue white control. Like, I wasn't just making up some obscure scenario. And his answer was like, that's actually a really good point, but I'm still gonna roll in your opponent's favor. um, So that's kind of funny, but yeah, it feels like people were probably thinking, oh, he's getting like favorable treatment, and I do think it's close. I talked to one high level judge. He felt like it was a close spot that he probably also would have allowed the take back, but um, also maybe the fact that Seth played a little slowly and still like got to take back. I see the arguments, for people who said he should have not been able to take back, but kind of sad that that's all people want to talk about. And a lot of people probably, as you said, misinformed. I even had a funny comment to that. I had someone say called his opponent the underdog. He's like just favorable treatment against the underdog, and it's literally like player of the
Literally the
year.
player of the year.
Yeah, in a favorable matchup. So yeah. As I said, that's the way
Yeah,
they've
I
been.
thought it was close when it happened. I was honestly surprised. I thought it wasn't going to be ruled in Seth's favor just because of the length of time. Like it was a long time, but that doesn't actually really go into the or it's not like a high impact on the decision, like the actual amount of time spent, right? If during that whole time no information was gained, then it's the same as if it was immediate, right? And I know that some people argue that maybe there could have been information gained. That's probably the strongest argument towards not allowing the take back there. Ken technically does have instants in his deck. He could have channeled a Harvester of Misery to kill a Grand in response to the Boomerang basics. It's not a play that makes sense, and it doesn't really. You could argue that it doesn't really gain information because there's just no way that Ken would have ever done it like that in that spot. But um, you know, it is a somewhat defensible argument. So I could have definitely seen it gone either way, and I think part of the reason why it got so much backlash was because it was so shortly after another mistake with the Quench, if you saw that one as well, um, which is funny because that one just straight up didn't even matter. I think it was the previous game, and Ken was dead by a mile, and Seth could have sacked every single treasure he had in play and discarded his whole hand and probably still won the game. So that one just straight up didn't matter. But the fact that it also happened fairly recently before the boomerang basics thing, which frankly did matter a lot. It would have been the difference between winning and losing the game is probably souring some people.
Yeah. I mean, clearly the rules are not perfect and not foolproof, but um, I think in general I like most of the being less cutthroat and not just getting your opponents as like judge calls, and also like you can't blame Seth, just blame the
No,
game, not the player. He's just, I mean, I've done that multiple times. I do it all the time, when I'm not sure, and um, when I've asked for spots where if I could take back because nothing has happened, as you mentioned, it's just knowing the rules. There's nothing wrong. Was trying to just, I guess, take advantage. Well, not take advantage, but as long as
you're just using the rules that the same way that everyone else would, right? And it's within your right as a player, and yeah, I mean you're taking advantage of it, but it's not like a negative thing to say that you're doing that.
yeah,
And
it's tough because if you don't do
um,
it and then you play against opponents who do it, and you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage. So
right,
um,
yeah, and like you said, like if this is something that someone doesn't like, then there should be a push to change the policy, right? Like you should never blame Seth for that
yeah,
because it's not even like he tried to do it like outright either. Like he straight up asked the judge, like, "Is it okay if I do this?"
yeah,
Um, so certainly shouldn't be putting any amount of blame on him for that. I think.
I agree. So yes, Seth ended up winning the whole thing. The finals was the mayor, so that did quite well in the top eight as well. Seth lost. I mean, Sam lost his quarters to, what did he lose to? I know
To
he.
Akira, he lost to
Okay,
Akira.
okay,
He
so
lost
he
to
lost the
Mirror. Yeah.
mayor. Yeah, he drew quite bad. He lost the first two games. Mulligan drew poorly. He got game three, and yeah, it sounds like he never really stood a chance. But when you don't do super well at a tournament, the next best thing is your teammates doing well. So really cool. We got to go out to team dinner on Saturday. Um, Good Thai place down the street. We actually went there on Friday and we ran it back on Saturday. We also ordered Thai food, I think, a couple times when we were at the house. So
Yeah, we ate a lot of Thai. Yeah.
yeah, it was good though. Yeah, not just fun experience. The tournament itself was ran well. The players were really well taken care of. There was great food at the players' party, just legit, high quality food, good. Uh, as
And during the tournament too,
yeah,
actually, we usually get a lunch break at these PTs, and this time the food was actually like great food. So I know people were like lining up, like excited to eat it on the second day.
yeah, there was actually no meat left on day one. Like I had a long match in the last round, and then Reed was watching me, and we're out of luck. And yeah, there's typically like one thing I always will complain about is that it's all sugary stuff. It's like the last video is extremely funny. It was literally the lunch, quote unquote lunch buffet was just a bunch of platters of cookies. I don't know if you remember that.
I do,
And
yeah.
and even for breakfast, there's like a few fruit, but it's usually like just like muffins and cookies, and even the yogurt is always like the ones with like the sugar added, the fruity ones. And this time there was, like good options. There's a nice coffee bar too. Um, I try not to drink coffee at PTs. I feel like I play better without the caffeine, even though I usually drink coffee at home, like once or twice a day. But that was a nice touch. So yeah, just that was really nice. The players' lounge and the whole experience.
Yeah, hopefully they keep that up because like that feels like such a small thing that's such a big impact on like the whole experience.
Yeah.
Like you said, just like the difference between having like an actual thing to bite into rather than just a cookie or whatever is just kind of a big deal, I think, for the keeping people hydrated and fed during the tournament.
Yeah, I don't necessarily expect them to have as nice food when they have like 300-ish players. I mean, maybe that'd
Right.
be awesome, but I think at least they're gonna be a little more careful with not just all sweets and muffins and on that point. That was one PT this year was pretty cool. They had like the popcorn machine. I thought that was kind of cool. That's not a bad snack, but yeah, no, that was definitely a nice touch. Mm, I guess we could maybe talk a bit about the list, the formats. The next Pro Tour is 1 week before their next potential window ban or ban window. So
Yep.
they're in a bit of a tough spot. Hopefully the meta just people figure it out and it's is it lesson is not like clearly the best deck. Um, Hopefully it's not also just like either is it lesson and mono red to counter that, and or just like a meta of all blue red decks. Because like I think 11 players or 11% of the field didn't play blue in constructed at the at Worlds,
Yeah, 11 people didn't have blue, and then it was
so less than
something like
10%.
yeah, a little less than that, and then something like 80% of the field was playing Fiery Islet or Spiral Wolf Canal or whatever it was, like uh just some blue red in the deck in some way. So it was pretty skewed, but I mean it's a small event. It's like I said earlier, when there's these big teams representing huge percentage of the metagame, that can skew things a bit. So we're definitely gonna have to see. There are some big standard events before the Pro Tour. There's the Spotlight Series in Atlanta at least, and I think maybe one other one as well. That's going to be the current standard format. So we're going to see some development there, and then obviously with the PT, there's going to be a new set as well, which could potentially change a lot of things. Like a lot of mana bases are going to get better, like I said earlier. That could open up some new strategies. Like right now, any base green white deck like kind of just doesn't even work mana base wise, even if it's two colors. So it could open up some stuff there, and then obviously we're gonna get all the new Lauren cards. So still some hope to be let out, but I think we'll have to see how the spotlight events go to see if this deck's like super dominant or anything moving forward.
Yeah, I'm hopeful too. I mean, I'm always kind of hopeful in these spots, and I feel like worst case, it's kind of interesting too to have a super defined meta and a clear best deck, and figuring that stuff out too. So I'm not too worried either way. But yeah, we'll see. The blue red eye is strong. It's not easy to attack. It can adapt. Kind of classic, classic stuff from these blue red decks we've seen in the past few years. I was thinking a bit about the list. I honestly don't think I would change the 75 we played. I mean, we almost all played one or two cards different, but I would maybe just shuffle sideboard cards and main deck cards around. Stuff like playing an annul and a braid and a lantern in the main deck, maybe one of each of these cards. I only played 22, 21 lands. I think I would maybe play 22. I think maybe I would take a page out of Seth's book and cut the fourth boomerang basic to make room. But yeah, minor tweaks, I think, going forward. I don't know if you thought about the list since the tournament or about even other decks um, that could be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the to start, I'm just gonna keep working on the lessons deck and see what happens. I'm probably gonna end up going to Atlanta. But that's still not until the new year, anyways. So it's still a while away. But yeah, I think for the most part, shuffling, maybe playing, a little bit more numbers on the stuff that's good against the other blue red decks, and adjusting downwards on some of the other stuff. Like I played the Price of Freedoms. We might not need those if Bant's gonna completely disappear and the artifact deck didn't do well. Maybe play some better artifact hate or stuff that's good against the is a non-lesson decks as well, like in a braid, so you have some overlap there. Um, but yeah, mostly just shuffling around. I think I agree with you. I was pretty happy with the 75 as a whole. Actually, I think we played too many Quantum Riddlers. Maybe that's something we can move away from.
Yeah, I cut the third one from my sideboard. I think I still like the
The
last
first
two.
two,
Yeah, just
yeah,
you play grindy games. You don't really want it in game one, but the mulligan insurance is such a nice thing to just built
yeah.
in mulligan insurance. I mean, that's literally how I stayed in the tournament in that round four, just mulligan is five and being able to actually play the game. But yeah, a braid especially. I was, not a big fan of that card in general. In general, it's not the most efficient one, but it does line up really nicely against Monument, against Duelist of the Mind. These free toughness creatures from the blue red looting deck, Tiger Steel and whatnot.
Those
Um,
decks have like Ghost Vacuum, Soul Guide Lantern too. You get some nice overlap there as well,
it kills the
especially Ghost Vacuum.
Yeah, it kills the bookworm too at instant speed against a Sultai Reanimator deck. If that deck
Yep.
sticks around, that's one card that's kind of nice to get rid of right away. So just having a monument removal too that you can rebuy with Storm Chaser talent. Um, that and I think Annul is pretty efficient too. Bringing it back was one mana up only. That's all you need, and having that hard counter for the mirror is something that's quite appealing. More than I had that quench in the main. I think it was fine for me. I think it was like probably fine, but I was envisioning these spots where like you counter and then you regrow the counter, but that never really happened, and it's not obviously not as efficient in the late game. But yeah,
Yeah,
just
it's mostly just, spell pierce plus lesson, I think
yeah.
is kind of its role. Yeah, it goes pretty dead, but and it ends up being a good type in the yard, which can come up a lot of the time. Like we had I don't think we talked about that at all today, but we had a lot of discussion around, lesson density in the deck, and that's kind of how we originally started at 4 Price of Freedom in the sideboard because we felt like we needed to keep our lesson numbers high when we cut all the removal spells. But then as we played the deck more, that became less of a necessity, and the quench was kind of the same thing on that part. So I think given some more time, we can probably fine tune those numbers, play more real cards, maybe stretch it a little thinner. I think an annul is a card that you can main deck in this format too. It's got targets against most decks, relevant targets too. So that's something you can consider as well. That could save a sideboard slice too, depending on what you cut. But Yeah, a lot of small tweaks you can make with the deck, but small tweaks are a big deal when you play a deck that can see, three-quarters of its deck every game.
Yeah. One of the scariest matchups I think is probably mono red for the deck. Even the Sultai Reanimator matchup I feel is not as scary if you're worried. Wasn't it was a little bad in our testing, but I played Seth a bit before the top eight. It didn't feel too bad. Ken, I guess you can't really. It's such small sample, and Ken, I think both the first two games Ken had no. He didn't draw the 4/4 basically, or didn't draw it until it was way too late. So kind of not the most relevant games, but yeah, that mono red matchup might be pretty scary because it was not great in our testing. I think I was really close to 50-50, and you can maybe come up with more hateable version than what we were playing against was the Needle, Razorkin Needle, whatever it's called, that 2-drop, and maybe even main deck Mageman Lizards.
Yeah, I played against a super hateful version online on ladder today. Actually, I played a couple ladder games that had it had Mage Vein Lizard, the Scalding Viper, and the Needlehead. So it was really maxing on the drawing cards hate.
Did it
Uh,
work?
yeah, he ended up getting me. So maybe that's how they need to do it going forward.
It's kind of tough too, because when I was talking about shuffling cards between main and sideboard, I was thinking about trimming one of the firebending lessons, trimming one of the techniques, or actually trimming on the removal spells because they're not the greatest in the mirror, and having a null lantern and a braid in the main, which are cards that are not very good against red. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be tricky, and if you play that blue red deck, you're probably gonna have to pick your poison to some extent, depending on how you want to build your deck.
Yeah, or how you want to tune the game one at least.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I guess that was worlds for us for our team. Um. Kind of breaking the format. It's always a good feeling. Doing well as a team, winning the tournament.
Just regular stuff for us.
Uh,
No, this is my
yeah.
first time that I played. So the first PT that I played with you guys post COVID was the PT right after you guys played Rakdos Vampires. So I had just missed that. Um, and this is the first time since then that I think we really had like a big team deck, right? Or at least one that I played. And obviously and this time every single person played it, and it was a cool feeling for sure. I've never got to experience that before. I've never played Worlds before, and I never played like a broken team back before, so it was kind of all new for me, and it was a nice experience.
Yeah, it's nice. It makes the last few days less stressful, um,
Hmm.
preparation and whatnot. So that
Well,
was
you start stressing about different things, like did we miss something?
sure,
That was constantly on my mind at least.
but I felt like I was a little more zen about the whole process and picking a deck and the last few cards. I did like the day before the turn after we had submitted the list. I was like, I should have played 22 lands. I should have played the force attachment. Quench Mana was right. I'm gonna get mana screwed every game because it's interesting. We played 21 lands. I think most of the team played 22, and the argue you kind of ran the numbers and you thought 21 made sense. But one thing I was worried about is the games where you just want to go talent into monument, not the games, because we have 21, but then you can draw with Grand, you can grow with attachment, you can just cast a wisdom, you can have artist talent going. But I was starting to envision these scenarios where I just want to go talent into monument. I don't want to have to jump through hoops to make my first land drop. And I thought that might cost me. And then, I went pretty solid, like 6-2, I guess 5-2 maybe if you don't want to count the draw that Corey scooped me. So I guess not a ton of regrets
It's
there.
it's always hard to quantify that stuff, right? Like, I mean, it's easy to calculate, right? Like, if you play one less land, you're probably 1.5% less likely to play your monument on turn three, gold fishing. Um, but like when you play actual games of Magic, that's not always how it plays out. And basically, the arguments we had back and forth between 21 and 22 were, you know, to play 22, like our deck is so good that missing land drops could be a detriment, and if we have to loot away extra lands, even though that's worse, then it's maybe not that big of a deal, or like a lot less of a big of a deal than missing land drops. And then the main argument for playing 21 was that we got to, fit an extra lesson in the deck, which doesn't always sound like a lot, but like sometimes, the difference between being able to discard a lesson to your grand or not is the difference between winning the game, right? Like your grand could be on a turn earlier, you start casting your ancestor, like you get to, go removal into draw 3 rather than just doing one and then doing the other the next turn. Like that could be the difference between winning and losing the game. So um kind of really hard to quantify those scenarios. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a little bit of a feel thing. It's going to be a little bit high variance based on the games you end up actually playing, and it can be really hard to tell. But um, I guess we'll see what it is going forward. Probably more people are going to copy Seth's mana base just because he ended up winning the event, and it does make it a little bit more likely that that ended up being the right one.
Yeah, there's also the scenario was how good our deck is at getting rid of extra lands. You do get in these spots sometimes where you do die with, 3 lands in hand or even 5 lands in hand.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's not non-zero, which makes it even trickier to figure out. But try
One thing
to
I did feel pretty confident about, regardless of how many lands the deck played, was the 4 abandoned attachments in the 75. I played them in the main. I know Seth played 3 main, 1 side. I think I don't. I think you did the same as well.
yeah.
Uh, that card just felt super important for tying the deck together, and I know for a long time we only had 3 copies, and I was really pushing for the fourth, and cutting a land was kind of my way to do that. But like those things weren't necessarily correlated, right? Like I wanted the fourth abandoned attachments, and I also thought cutting a land was okay. But like if I determined that playing 22 lands was right, then I still would have tried to make room for the 4 attachments, just because I felt like it was so important at keeping the deck flowing properly and kind of capitalizing on those monument non-talent hands a lot better than any other way.
Yeah, I think at the very least I should have had 4 attachments, and I mean I was playing 3+1. Yeah, people were asking about that sideboard attachments. Basically, yeah, matchups where you have to board out a lot of removal, want to keep the lessons count high. Also in these matchups, you usually bring in counterspell, so they play nice with your, had a second quench. Um, if they don't play into your counters, you can play card drawing spells, the classic. So yeah, no, I'm curious to see what happens next. I'm not going to any tournaments until Richmond, but I guess I'll be defaulting to at least try to play a bit of standard. I know they just came out with pre-modern on Magic Online, so looking forward to trying that. But yeah, probably a decent bit of standard in my future. I did try today on stream some of the decks I didn't have time to try before Worlds, or some of the decks I only played like a few matches with, and nothing looked very exciting, honestly. I tried that black green sack deck with Pursuit, kind of Cup, Pursuit, Sephiroth, that kind of stuff. Didn't look super great. I tried Mono White Ugin, same. I tried my Shrines deck a bit more, no good. So we'll see what people figure out. But I'm probably gonna also. It's tough because I should start with Blue Red Lesson, but I'm not sure that's what people on my stream want to see. Maybe, anyways, not a bad place to start.
Who
But
knows? Maybe if you find something you love, I just looked it up and I mentioned that I'm going to the spotlight in Atlanta most likely. There's also a spotlight in Lyon, France on the same
yeah,
weekend. So
yeah, no, I'm probably not gonna travel for that.
is
Even though I do,
that far from you?
no, it's pretty close, like 2 or 3 hours train ride. But I don't know. I might end up going a really low chance. I do own the cards now. I don't always. I almost never own my PT deck. I usually borrow most of my cards, but this time around, since we're all playing the same deck and a lot of it was new cards I had, or some of it was new cards I had to get my own copy. So I do own most of a top tier standard deck for once. Um, but yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
we.
kind of a wrap. I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything else. You're
No, I
gonna.
think that's about it. I mean, cover the tournament, cover the format. It was a fun weekend, fun week away. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, testing house is the best. It
Mm-hmm.
really is, and it was nice to have the closed. I do like, I think, that the magic on PTs, but I think I like it a little more when it's just us and a little more quiet. They both have obviously their pros and cons, but it's all less hectic, and yeah, it was nice. But yeah, if you made it this far, as always, thank you so much for listening. I guess we didn't put our life on the line this week, but I'm assuming we'd both play Is a Lesson.
I think it's pretty clear. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for listening, watching if you're on YouTube. Hope you all have great rest of your day, of your week, and we'll see you later. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.